The house on Maple Ridge Road. I built it with my own 2 hands back in 1987. Every beam, every nail, every coat of paint. 37 years of memories in those walls. And there I was, standing at my son's funeral, watching them lower his casket into the frozen February ground, when my daughter-in-law leaned over and whispered something that made my blood run cold. "You have 30 days to get out of my house, old man. Start packing tonight." My name is Harold McIntyre. I'm 68 years old. I spent 40 years working construction in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Built half the houses in our neighborhood with these hands. And now, I'm going to tell you how I lost everything in a single afternoon, and how my son reached out from beyond the grave to save me. Let me take you back to the beginning. My wife, Dorothy, passed away in 2019. Pancreatic cancer. Took her in 8 months. After she died, I couldn't stand being alone in that big house. Too many memories. Every room reminded me of her. The kitchen, where she made her famous butter tarts. The living room where we watched Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday. The bedroom where I held her hand as she took her last breath. My son, Michael, came to me with a solution. He was 44 years old then, married to a woman named Vanessa for about 6 years. They lived in a small condo downtown, always complaining about the space. "Dad," Michael said, "why don't you move into the basement apartment? We'll move into the main house. You won't be alone, and we can take care of each other." It seemed like a perfect arrangement. I signed over the deed to Michael. My lawyer, old Jim Patterson, he warned me, said I should keep my name on the property, at least partially. But Michael was my only child, my flesh and blood. I trusted him completely. The first 2 years were wonderful. Michael and I would work in the garage on weekends, restoring an old 1969 Mustang that belonged to my father. Vanessa seemed pleasant enough, though she always kept her distance. She worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, always busy, always on the phone, always traveling. Then things started to change. It was subtle at first. Vanessa started making comments about my presence. "Harold, do you really need to use the main kitchen? The basement has a perfectly good microwave." Or, "Harold, Michael and I need privacy. Maybe you could go to the Legion on weekends instead of staying home." Michael would apologize to me in private. "She's stressed with work, Dad. Just give her time." But I noticed other things. Michael was losing weight. He looked tired all the time, dark circles under his eyes. He started forgetting things, simple things, like where he put his keys or what day of the week it was. "I'm just overworked," he'd say when I asked. "The accounting firm is killing me this tax season." In October of last year, Michael collapsed at work. They rushed him to Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center. The doctors ran every test imaginable. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. His liver was failing. His kidneys were struggling. But there was no clear cause. I visited him every single day. Vanessa was there too, of course, always bringing him homemade smoothies, full of nutrients, she'd say with that thin smile of hers. Help him get his strength back. Michael pulled me aside one afternoon when Vanessa had stepped out to take a phone call. He could barely lift his head off the pillow. "Dad," he whispered, "I need you to do something for me." "Anything, son." "In my desk at home, bottom drawer. There's a manila envelope taped to the underside. Don't let Vanessa find it. Promise me." I promised. But before I could ask what was in the envelope, Vanessa walked back in with another one of her smoothies. Michael died 3 weeks later, November 15th. The doctors listed the cause of death as multiple organ failure of unknown origin. He was 46 years old. The funeral was held at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church on Simpson Street. Same church where Michael was baptized. Same church where Dorothy and I got married in 1978. Half of Thunder Bay came to pay their respects. Michael was loved by everyone. He coached minor hockey for 15 years, volunteered at the food bank, never turned down anyone who needed help with their taxes. I sat in the front pew, trying to hold myself together. My only child, my boy, gone. I kept thinking about teaching him to skate on Lake Superior when he was 5 years old, teaching him to drive in the old Chevy pickup, dancing with him at his wedding. Vanessa sat beside me, dry-eyed. I don't think I saw her cry once that entire week. After the service, people gathered at the church hall for sandwiches and coffee. That's when Vanessa found me standing alone by the window, looking out at the snow falling on the parking lot. "We need to talk," she said, her voice flat and cold. "Can it wait? I just buried my son." "No, it can't." She crossed her arms. "You have 30 days to vacate the property. I want you out by December 15th. I turned to face her. "Excuse me? The house belongs to me now. Michael's will leaves everything to his surviving spouse. That's me. I don't want you living in my basement anymore. You have 30 days. That's more than generous. Vanessa, I built that house. I lived there for 37 years. And now you don't. 30 days, Harold. Start packing tonight." She walked away, leaving me standing there in shock. A few people nearby had overheard. They looked at me with pity. Old Mrs. Kowalski from the Polish church came over and patted my arm, but she didn't say anything. What could she say? That night, I went home and sat in my basement apartment, staring at the wall. Everything I owned was in that house. Dorothy's china collection, my father's war medals, 40 years of photo albums. And now, I had 30 days to pack it all up and disappear. Then I remembered Michael's words, the manila envelope. I waited until I heard Vanessa's car leave the driveway. She was probably going to her lawyer, already planning how to sell off Michael's belongings. I crept upstairs to Michael's home office. The room still smelled like him. His coffee mug was still on the desk, half full, growing mold. I found the drawer he mentioned, reached underneath. My fingers touched paper and tape. I pulled out the envelope and hurried back to my apartment. Inside, I found 3 documents that would change everything. The first was a handwritten letter from Michael, dated just 2 weeks before he died. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you in person, but I didn't know who to trust. I think Vanessa is poisoning me. I've been keeping a log of my symptoms, and they always get worse after she brings me those smoothies." I confronted her about the divorce papers I found in her briefcase, and she laughed, said I'd never make it to court. "I'm scared, Dad. I've hired a private investigator named Frank Belanger. He has more information. Please, whatever happens, don't let her win." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. The second document was a draft of divorce papers. Michael had already filled in his section. He was filing for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse and financial misconduct. The papers referenced hidden bank accounts, forged signatures, and suspicious behavior related to spousal health. The third document was a new will, dated November 1st. It specifically revoked all previous wills and left everything, the house, his savings, his RRSPs, to me, his father, Harold James McIntyre. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. "I've already sent a copy to Patterson Law Office. She won't be able to destroy this one." I sat there in my basement apartment, reading those papers over and over. My son knew. He knew she was killing him, and he tried to protect me anyway. The next morning, I called Jim Patterson's office. His receptionist said he could see me that afternoon. I didn't tell Vanessa where I was going, just said I needed to run some errands. Jim's office was the same as it had always been. Cramped, messy, smelling like old paper and pipe tobacco, even though he quit smoking 20 years ago. He took one look at my face and closed the door. "Harold, I've been trying to reach you. I have something important." "I have something too." I handed him the envelope. Jim read through the documents. His face went pale. "Good Lord. She killed him, Jim. My son. She poisoned him. Now, hold on. These are serious accusations. We need to be careful." Michael wrote it himself, and he mentioned a private investigator, Frank Belanger. Jim nodded slowly. "I know Frank. Good man. Former RCMP. If Michael hired him, there's probably more to this story." He picked up the phone. "Let me make some calls." 3 days later, I sat in Frank Belanger's office on the north side of town. Frank was in his 60s, retired Mountie, built like a refrigerator. He had a file on his desk that was 2 inches thick. "Your son contacted me back in September," Frank said. "Suspected his wife was having an affair. That's usually how these cases start. But what I found was much worse." He opened the file. Vanessa McIntyre, born Vanessa Wright, has been married twice before. Her first husband, Derek Wright, died in 2011 inches, Sudbury, officially listed as a heart attack. He was 39 years old, left her a house and $200,000 in life insurance. My stomach turned. Her second husband, Gary Drummond, died in 2015 inches, Sault Ste. Marie, multiple organ failure of unknown origin. Sound familiar? He was 43, left her $300,000 in life insurance plus a cottage on Lake Huron. She killed them, I said. She killed them all. I can't prove that yet. But here's what I can prove. He pulled out another document. 3 months ago, Vanessa took out a life insurance policy on Michael. $2 million. She also opened several offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I found wire transfers totaling over $500,000 from Michael's business accounts into those offshore accounts, all using forged signatures. How do you know they're forged? Frank smiled grimly. Because I had them analyzed by a forensic document examiner. A very good one. Used to work for the Canadian government. The signatures on those wire transfers don't match Michael's actual signature. The pressure points are wrong, the letter connections are off, and there's a distinctive loop in Michael's capital M that the forger didn't know about. This is enough to go to the police. Almost. We need one more piece. The toxicology. The doctors couldn't find anything. Because they weren't looking for the right thing. Frank leaned forward. One of my contacts at Health Sciences Center did some digging. Off the record, they found traces of ethylene glycol in Michael's blood samples. Antifreeze. Harold. She was putting antifreeze in those smoothies. I felt like I was going to be sick. My son. My boy. Poisoned with antifreeze like a stray dog. Frank put his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry. I know this is hard, but we've got her. We've got evidence of the poison, the forged documents, the previous husbands, the offshore accounts. I've already been in contact with the OPP Major Crimes Unit. They're building a case. How long? Could be weeks, could be months. These things take time. They want to make sure the charges stick. And what am I supposed to do in the meantime? She's trying to throw me out of my own house. Frank smiled. That's where your lawyer comes in. Jim Patterson was ready for war. He filed an emergency motion to freeze all of Michael's assets pending investigation. He produced Michael's new will, properly witnessed and notarized, which explicitly left the house to me. He submitted evidence of the forged signatures on the previous will that Vanessa was trying to use. Vanessa's lawyer, some hotshot from Toronto, she must have been paying a fortune, tried to fight it, said the new will was obviously fabricated, said I was a grieving old man being manipulated by unscrupulous lawyers. But then Jim produced Frank's investigation file, the previous husbands, the life insurance policies, the offshore accounts, the forged signatures. The judge's face went white. The motion was granted. All assets frozen. Vanessa couldn't touch a dime. She showed up at my basement apartment that night, pounding on the door. You think you're clever, old man? You think you can beat me? I've gotten away with this twice before. Who's going to believe you? You're just a senile old construction worker. I'm a successful businesswoman. I have lawyers. I have connections. I opened the door. You forgot one thing, Vanessa. What's that? My son was smarter than you. He knew what you were doing. He documented everything. And he made sure you'd never get away with it. Behind her, 2 OPP officers were walking up the driveway. She turned and saw them. Vanessa McIntyre? One of them said. You're under arrest for the murder of Michael McIntyre. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel without delay. Watching them put the handcuffs on her was the most satisfying moment of my life. She screamed, cursed, threatened, said she'd sue everyone involved. But they put her in the back of that police car and drove away. And suddenly my house was quiet for the first time in years. The trial took 9 months. Vanessa hired the most expensive defense lawyers in Ontario. They tried every trick in the book. Said the evidence was circumstantial. Said Michael's letter was a forgery. Said Frank Belanger was a disgraced former officer with a grudge. But the Crown had something Vanessa didn't count on. Her previous husband's cases had been reopened. Bodies were exhumed. New toxicology tests were run. Derek Wright and Gary Drummond both showed traces of ethylene glycol poisoning. 3 murders, same method, same motive, same cold, calculating killer. The forensic document examiner testified for 2 days, showed the jury exactly how Vanessa's forgeries differed from Michael's real signature. The loop on the M was too narrow. The pressure on the downstroke was inconsistent. The spacing between letters was off by millimeters. But millimeters were enough. A nurse from the hospital testified that Vanessa insisted on preparing all of Michael's meals herself. Said she became aggressive when staff tried to bring him food from the cafeteria. Michael's colleague from the accounting firm testified that Michael had confided in him about the divorce papers. Said Michael was scared of his wife. Said Michael had started sleeping in his office some nights because he didn't feel safe at home. The offshore banking expert traced over $800,000 to accounts in Vanessa's name. Money that should have been Michael's. Money she'd been stealing for years. And finally, they played Michael's voice. Frank had found a recording on Michael's phone, made just 5 days before he died. You could hear how weak he was, how tired. This is Michael McIntyre. If anyone finds this recording, please know that I believe my wife, Vanessa McIntyre, is poisoning me. I've tried to tell the doctors, but they don't believe me. She brings me smoothies every day, and every day I feel worse. I've hidden documents in my desk at home for my father, Harold. Dad, if you're listening, I love you. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Please don't let her hurt anyone else. Half the courtroom was crying by the time the recording ended. Even the judge had to take a recess. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. First-degree murder, fraud, forgery. The judge sentenced Vanessa to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Her lawyer filed an appeal, of course. It was denied within 3 months. The evidence was too overwhelming. She'll die in prison, just like she deserved. After the trial, the court officially recognized Michael's second will. The house on Maple Ridge Road came back to me. My house. The house I built with my own hands. I walked through the rooms alone that first night, touched the walls I had plastered, looked out the windows I had installed, sat in the living room where Michael took his first steps, where Dorothy and I celebrated our 30th anniversary, where we watched the Leafs almost win the cup back in '93. I cried. For Michael, for Dorothy, for all the years I thought I'd lost. But I wasn't done yet. See, Michael's will left me more than just the house. It left me his savings too. And Michael, careful accountant that he was, had saved quite a bit over the years, not counting what Vanessa stole. With Frank Belanger's help, we recovered most of the offshore money. Took almost a year of legal battles, but we got it back. Over $700,000 returned to Michael's estate. To me, I knew exactly what to do with it. Michael loved woodworking. When he was a teenager, we used to spend weekends in the garage, building furniture, birdhouses, anything we could think of. He always said that if he didn't become an accountant, he'd open a carpentry shop, teach kids how to work with their hands. So that's what I did. I converted the garage into a workshop, bought all the equipment, band saws, lathes, planers, the works. I partnered with the Thunder Bay Community Center to offer free woodworking classes for underprivileged youth, kids who might otherwise be on the streets, getting into trouble. Now they're learning how to build something with their own hands. We called it Michael's Workshop. On the 1-year anniversary of Michael's death, we held a grand opening. Over 200 people came. The mayor gave a speech. Mrs. Kowalski brought her famous pierogies. Kids from the first class showed off the birdhouses they'd built. I stood in the corner, watching it all, and I felt Michael there with me. Not literally, of course. I'm not the superstitious type, but his spirit, his legacy, everything he wanted to be, everything he tried to protect, it was all there in that room. Frank Belanger came up to me with a coffee. "You did good, Harold." Michael did good. I just finished what he started. Same thing, far as I can tell. We stood there in silence for a while, watching the kids laugh and hammer and make mistakes and try again. "You know," Frank said, "in 30 years of police work, I've seen a lot of bad people get away with terrible things. Money, connections, good lawyers, it usually wins. But not this time. Your son made sure of that. He was always smarter than me. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I still live in that house on Maple Ridge Road. I'm 70 now, give or take. My knees aren't what they used to be, and I can't swing a hammer like I did in my 30s. But I'm there, at the workshop, 3 days a week, teaching kids how to measure twice and cut once, how to sand with the grain, how to take pride in something you built yourself. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in the living room and talk to Michael. Tell him about the workshop. Tell him about the kids. Tell him I miss him every single day. And I tell him thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to document the truth. Thank you for making sure I'd find that envelope. Thank you for protecting your old man, even when you were the one who needed protecting. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry. At Vanessa. At the system that let her kill 2 men before Michael. At the doctors who couldn't figure out what was happening. I tell them no. Anger is a poison too, just like ethylene glycol. It'll eat you up from the inside if you let it. I choose to remember the good instead. 46 years of having a son who loved me, a wife who stood by me through everything, a life built on hard work and honest labor. And I tell them about justice, real justice, the kind that comes from people doing the right thing. Jim Patterson, who fought for me in court. Frank Belanger, who dug until he found the truth. The Crown attorneys who made sure Vanessa would never hurt anyone again. The judge who gave her the sentence she deserved. My son is buried next to his mother at Riverside Cemetery. I visit them every Sunday after church. Bring fresh flowers in summer, brush the snow off the headstones in winter. Tell them both what's happening at the workshop. Update them on the Leafs. Still haven't won a cup. I know I'll join them eventually. I'm not scared of that. I've had a good life. Made some mistakes, sure, but who hasn't? Built something that matters. Loved and been loved. And when that day comes, I know Michael will be there waiting, probably with a sawhorse and some lumber, ready to get back to work. Until then, I've got kids to teach, a workshop to run, a legacy to protect. The house on Maple Ridge Road still stands. It'll stand long after I'm gone. I made sure of that. Built it to last, just like my son built his case against the woman who killed him. Some things you build for yourself. Some things you build for the people who come after. And some things you build for justice. If you're listening to this story, I want you to take something away from it. Protect the people you love. Document everything important. Make sure your will is updated and your affairs are in order. You never know when you might need to reach out from beyond to save someone. And if someone ever tells you to stop crying at your child's funeral and pack your bags, don't get angry. Don't make a scene. Just smile, pack your bag, and quietly leave. Then go find the truth. Because the truth has a way of coming out. It might take time. It might take patience. It might take help from people you never expected. But it comes out. And when it does, justice follows. My name is Harold McIntyre. I'm 68 years old. I live in Thunder Bay, Ontario, in a house I built with my own 2 hands. And my son saved my life. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found it meaningful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. Stay safe out there. Take care of each other. And remember, the people who love you are watching over you, even when you can't see them. This is Harold McIntyre, signing off from Michael's workshop. God bless.